really recognizing that has not happened. So we really do have action underway. And while there is more work ahead of us in all sectors, I'll say that our CAP implementation process and the collaborative structure are important assets in our current and future work. As Council President Gary will soon discuss, the fact that Routt County CAP implementation is anchored in one, an intergovernmental agreement, and two, that it utilizes working groups to prioritize and define how best to implement the CAP in the most timely and impactful ways is important and proves to be impactful. I've had numerous discussions with other governments and nonprofits who really want to learn about our regional model of CAP implementation because of its positioning in government processes, as well as its engagement with regional community members and technical experts. We all have much to be proud of, and our collaborative is an important commitment to reducing emissions at a time that we need it most. As you'll soon hear, thousands of hours have been invested in our CAP implementation process by some of the region's best technical experts and leaders. And we at YVSC, and I want to say on behalf of the Collaborative Board, want to really thank you all for your time and commitment that you've shown. The Collaborative Board and the Collaborative Working Group members, thank you all for everything that you've done to advance this important initiative. YVSC is pleased to serve as the project management entity for the collaborative, which means we support the collaborative board with administrative and programmatic activities associated with CAP implementation. This fall, YVSC will be supporting the board in moving forward the creation of a climate equity framework, which will be a framework through which to pass the CAP collaborative recommendations and other actions to identify how to increase the number and diversity of those who benefit from CAP implementation. A first step in the forthcoming work will be to develop a relevant and meaningful definition of climate equity in Routt County, and then to develop the framework, and then begin the initial work of passing the recommendations through that framework in order to identify how to increase climate equity as we continue to move ahead on CAP implementation. The Collaborative Board is committed to this important work ahead, and we look forward to sharing information with you about it in time. So at this time, it is my great pleasure to welcome City Council President Gail Gary to the floor to provide an overview of the CAP collaborative process.
All right, thank you, Michelle. And I think with that, Ashley, you'll go ahead and bring up the presentation. So as Michelle stated, I am honored to be able to serve as the Climate Action Plan Collaborative Board Chair. And I want to start out by just saying thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to participate in this call today, as well as to thank you for what you do individually as well as collectively to advance climate action here in the Yampa Valley. So next slide, please. Our goal for today's call is to provide a progress update on the actions that are set forth in the Climate Action Plan. And to ground that discussion, we're going to start out with just a little bit of background on the Climate Action Plan, as well as on the collaborative. Then I'm going to hand it off, as Michelle said, to some of the program managers at the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council and working group members to talk a little more specifically about updates from the working group sector perspectives. And then we'll finish it up with some questions and discussion. So looking forward to that part of the conversation as well. Next slide, please. Routt County and the City of Steamboat Springs commissioned 2 greenhouse gas inventories, one in 2005 and the second in 2018. In the 2018 study, as you can see in the chart, the best source of emissions is energy, primarily from commercial and residential buildings, which made up 54% of the county's carbon emissions, followed by transportation at 26%. These studies were the catalyst for the creation of the Climate Action Plan. They also identified the county's major sources of emissions and provided data to understand the emission trends, as well as to chart a course for collective action on climate change going forward. Next slide, please. The CAP identifies strategies that reduce carbon emissions across energy, transportation, waste, land use, and the economy sectors. You know, these are very general actions that were set forth in the climate action plan, and more importantly, they're kind of overarching guardrails. The recommended actions that we will be talking about later in more specific detail during this call are prioritized, and they're implementable actions. Accountability strategies, as you see at the bottom there, are primarily under the purview of the CAP board and the responsibility of the CAP board as we move forward. If all of the 22 strategies and associated actions are implemented successfully, Routt County is anticipated to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2030 and 74% by 2050 as compared to the 2018 emissions baseline. And I think it's really important to underscore that the state of Colorado has even higher science-based climate targets of 50% emission reduction by 2030 and 90% by 2050 from their 2005 levels. So we, wholeheartedly believe that the Routt County goals are achievable and are necessary for us to do our part. Next, please. In 2021, Routt County and the City of Steamboat Springs and the towns of Hayden, Oak Creek, and Yampa adopted the Climate Action Plan and signed an intergovernmental agreement to form the Routt County Climate Action Plan Collaborative. The collaborative creates an organizational structure to help facilitate regional decision-making to track execution of the CAP and the associated greenhouse gas emission reductions, and to provide the financial resources to advance the Climate Action Plan. The IGA also allowed for the creation of working groups to support the board by focusing on the implementation of the strategies. The working groups are comprised of technical and very diverse set of experts, including our governmental staff members as well. I think it's also, important to note that at the end of 2022, the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council was selected as the program management entity to provide administrative, program, technical, and communication support for the collaborative board. The IGA and the collaborative are set up for success by grounding the implementation in the collaborative intergovernmental efforts and by creating the working groups to help guide and support the board's efforts moving forward. Next slide, please. Pursuant to the IGA, the local governments appointed members and an alternate to represent each one of the governmental entities, as well as 4 community members to comprise the collaborative board. And I believe we have a number of different board members on the call today. And if you have your camera on, you can raise your hand so everybody can see you, and certainly appreciate everybody's work on this. The board really, as I mentioned, fulfills the accountability section of the Climate Action Plan. We work to help identify funding sources to ensure that the CAP is adequately funded, as well as develop matrix to monitor the progress. We also work to ensure alignment with other community plans and efforts to carry out educational programs and communications in support of the Climate Action Plan. Per the IGA, the board also develops policies, approves, and provides oversight over policies, projects, and priorities that result in the implementation of the Climate Action Plan. I will just make a note in terms of looking at the slide that we, with the departure of Steve Johnson from the YVEA, we do have an open position as one of our community reps that we are about to announce the fulfillment of, as well as with the changes in the town of Oak Creek. We've got some changes, on the slide, and more to come on that front. With that, let's go on to the next slide. The board also approved technical experts for each of the 5 working sector groups. And again, I know a number of the folks from the working group are on this call today, so again, raise your hand, and we certainly, appreciate all that you have done to help move this forward. As I mentioned, the strategies set out in the Climate Action Plan were very high level. So the task before the working group members was to drill down to develop actionable, high impact recommendations to meet the Climate Action Plan carbon reduction goals and strategies across the 5 sectors. The working groups also provide guidance on projects, initiatives, and climate-related policies, and they have lent their voice to a number of timely issues that have come before the various different entities in our community, including outdoor snow melt, the building and land use code updates, recycling and local procurement, issues that will have a lasting impact on the carbon emission reductions in our community. Currently there's over, I think, 70 people who are actively participating in the collaborative working groups to date, and they have easily volunteered and invested more than 2,000 hours into this process. So for that, we are grateful. For their service, the CAP working groups received the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council's Environmental Karen Award. And so again, we really appreciate everybody's efforts in terms of helping move this process forward. On to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, the strategies that were set forth in the Climate Action Plan were very high level. So the task for the working groups was to look at those strategies and to create actionable, implementable steps. The working groups studied the strategies, they evaluated what was currently being done to implement them, they identified the gaps and what was needed to be done to move forward. Across the 5 different sectors, they came up with 40 recommended actions that best implement the adopted Climate Action Plan. And again, these are not separate from the Climate Action Plan. They are specific, prioritized actions and actionable steps to implement the strategies. And again, all recommendations can be found on the recommendation action summary sheet that you can find on the CAP Collaborative website at routeclimateaction.com. On to the next slide. So we are now in the CAP implementation phase. The working groups have moved to quarterly meetings to support progress of and to provide updates on our CAP recommendations progress. We also continue to tap into their expertise on CAP-related policy and developments as needed. The CAP board continues to meet monthly to fulfill the accountability role of the CAP. This includes also helping to secure long-term funding for the CAP, working on supporting the education efforts, and engaging public and private partners as we move forward. Finally, our CAP governmental partners, supported by the CAP Collaborative Board and working groups, are tasked with putting these civic recommendations into action. This is a critical time to lead by example, and we know that the momentum and support is here to move forward on meaningful implementation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul Boney, who is the Director of Energy and Transportation for the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, to take us into the next section of today's program.
Thank you, Gail. Just a quick sound check. Give me a thumbs up. I assume the microphone's working. So it's really exciting to have worked with these working groups to build the recommendations. And it's even more exciting to give you all a quick update on where we're at. And basically, I'll start with energy, which, as you may recall, is the single biggest carbon emissions sector in the CAP. And I'm going to say, all in all, we're not all green yet, but we have a lot of momentum. And most of what you see there in either yellow or red, and I don't think we've explained this color coding, so I'll take a second to do that. If you see progress to date in green, that means we've achieved that recommendation. If the recommendation progress is in yellow, that means that effort is underway. And then if the color code is red, that means that we hadn't started yet. So looking at energy quickly, we'll start at the top, which is green. And a big win was the adoption of the 2021 building code, which included a local cause or local amendment that allowed only non-fossil fuel snowmelt. And that was a really big and essential effort to stop the growth of carbon emissions so that we could then focus our efforts on the reduction of carbon emissions in our existing building and energy spaces. Now, the ones that are in yellow, and I don't have the time to go through each of those in detail, you can certainly read this. They'll be posted so you can have a deep dive. And if you ever have a question, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of the members of the Energy Working Group. But we're basically in the first steps of some of these. One of the biggest items we wanted to accomplish was to target buildings that some folks use the term that are energy hogs. But how do we go after those big emitters and bring those in play? And at the Sustainability Council, we have a fabulous internship program. So we're able to take one of our interns this year, Chase Portugal, started by a deep dive into the county assessor's database. And we've identified by square footage, multifamily buildings and individual buildings and apartments that use fossil fuels to start outlining where we would do electrification to reduce carbon emissions. So we're happy to get that initiative underway this summer. I'm happy to report that both the city and the county are doing decarbonization benchmarking for their facilities, which will then set the foundation for them to develop their plans to decarbonize in the timeframes outlined in the CAP. Another big point in this recommendation was to make sure that the Yampa Valley and Routt County were engaged with Atmos Energy in their clean heat plan. That plan is in progress. So to explain the process a little bit, the utility comes up with their goals and their plan and their budgets. That goes to the Public Utility Commission. That process is underway, and we're hoping that Atmos Energy will have their clean heat plan approved sometime late this year, early next year, and then that'll open the door for us to work with them to do their energy efficiency and electrification efforts here in Routt County. Energy recommendation on 5 basically said we would like to have lots of renewable generation in the valley. And the YVA, our electric provider, through their contract negotiations with Guzman, has an open RFP right now that would bring 10% of locally owned renewables into their portfolio and bring their total Guzman renewable portfolio up to 18% local. So when that process closes, they hope to be reviewing those proposals by the end of the year. The contract awards would be in 2025, 2026. And so we know it will blow through that 5% baseline electricity easily. And then there's about $750,000 worth of letters of intent to award to advance geothermal energy systems in Routt County that would go towards that 5% of baseline natural gas. And then the one you see in red, don't worry too much about that. That was basically to obtain funding to write the plan that would carry us to 2050. And the CAP board approved just last week to apply for a grant from the Colorado Energy Office that would actually fund the effort to start the development of that plan and the implementation items. So we hope to change that red to yellow in the very near future. So that takes care of energy, and then we can flip to transportation. There we go. And transportation is sort of the same thing, a mix of green and yellow and red. The first recommendation to adopt and implement a county-wide EV readiness plan, just a brief note, the city does have an EV readiness plan, the rest of the county does not. So Routt County has obtained grant funding to develop that type of a plan for the rest of the county. So that's underway. The countywide vehicle miles traveled, which is really encouraging people to walk and ride bicycles. Again, the city has a plan in place to promote vehicle mile traveled reduction. And I'm happy to report that the county health department has established a built environment coalition, which is kind of a funny word, but built environment is bike trails, sidewalks, those kind of things that promote vehicle mile traveled reductions or multimodal transportation. So that group's been up and running for a few months, and so we're expecting great things from that. The red one there is to find non-sales tax or non-general revenue for Steamboat Springs Transit. That's on hold, not because of a lack of interest, and there's been much discussion on how to put permanent funding under SST. But really, if you drop down to the bottom, the big recommendation there was to have a regional transit authority. So those two are interwoven. So the first path, I'll kind of leave the RTA funding, basically say that will happen after we decide the regional transit authority will then go back to the steamboat transit funding. For those of you who fly in and out of the the airport. You can now dedicate some carbon offset funding, and there's also plans to increase that you'll hear about in the economy section. So that one has been done. And then we did, as part of the building code adoption, we did also adopt EV readiness for all new construction. So that recommendation is done. And then the big one on the table is the Regional Transit Authority. So a preliminary study's been done. All the local governments have given their preliminary approval. The big next step is to complete the detailed plan on what it would take to implement a regional transit authority. And that would go into all the details of where's the service area, how will it be funded, when will it start, what will the intergovernment agreement look like. So that is underway, and it's a big project, so expect some kind of a time frame and decision to bring that ultimately to the voters probably in 2025. So again, all things are good, and our only red item on here is sort of pending one of the yellow items. So we're happy with the progress that the transportation working group recommendations have achieved so far. So with that, I will hand control back to Ashley.
All right, and we'll move to Scott Cowman for updates from the waste sector working group.
All right, thanks, Michelle, and hello, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to update you on what's going on with waste. There's exciting times here. We're in a transition period where we're starting to work with a new landfill owner and hauler. So lots of opportunities there, and I've met with them, and I see Alicia's on this call. She's met with them also, and we're going to get together and meet again in August. So looking forward to working with them, and I think the best we can do is have a strong partnership with them along with the city, and they seem to be on board with wanting to help us achieve some of these goals and to start moving the needle, especially with municipal solid waste diversion. I'll just start with my list here, some of the ongoing activities. Alicia's been busy implementing the commercial recycling ordinance for the city. She's also working on a C&D study with some funding assistance from the county, the building department. So that's construction and demolition. As part of the Colorado's Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, businesses have until this month to stop using polyester foam or styrofoam. And so that kind of hits on a couple of our goals. As everyone knows, Steamboat implemented a bag ban some time ago, and they were ahead of the curve with that because the state implemented their own bag ban. So that goes in towards reducing the use of plastics in our community. We are working with the city on trying to refine and improve our data collection. And we know that that's going to be important to take advantage of forthcoming EPR funds. That's the Extended Producer Responsibility Act, where the producers are going to be responsible and paying into a fund to help with rural recycling. And so we're trying to position ourselves in the best way we can to take advantage of that funding. And, the fact that we have these working groups and a waste sector working group, we have a really good framework in place to be very organized and to hopefully use EPR funds to help move the needle on municipal solid waste diversion. The Circular Action Alliance is in charge of the implementation plan for EPR. And so they are going to have a road show, and hopefully we can get our community in on that. So I'll be talking to them along with Alicia to try to, get us as one of their stops and, like I said, position ourselves in the best way we can to take advantage of that funding. And I think that's all I have.
Thanks, Scott. I'll take a run through our work on land use and water as a key part of climate action. A reminder that our climate action plan in Routt County is a little bit different than a lot of the other ones, particularly on the West Slope, and that we included from the very beginning a section on land use, which reflects that how we develop our land in the future can definitely impact emissions as we clear and change natural habitat, and that we also have a great opportunity through restoration of natural habitats to both help sequester carbon from the atmosphere as well as avoid future emissions. And then also through all of these practices, we get an enormous amount of co-benefits about things we care about. So the land use working group includes a range of different kinds of experts, from forestry to water management to agriculture, and we cover a lot of ground in our recommendations. Progress is being made across all of them. You'll see a lot of yellow, and that's partially because a lot of these things, such as restore wetlands, doesn't have an end goal. It's we need to increase the pace and keep increasing what we're doing. So we had 11 recommendations, and I'm going to sort of lump a few of them as I report on them. The first I'm going to point out is a number of these relate to protecting riparian areas and wetlands in the county. These are the most important habitat types around the world from a carbon sequestration perspective, and we have lots of opportunity both to protect and restore these kinds of systems. We're making good progress across in lots of different areas. The city of Steamboat Springs is working on a major wetland restoration concept and design down at the confluence of the Walton Creek and the Yampa River. The Forest Service with YVSC as a partner has been doing a lot of wet meadow restoration practice, which is a very key small-scale wetland habitats in our high elevation grasslands. Other groups like Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust and Nature Conservancy, Trout Unlimited, are also working in this space, doing these types of small scale but very important types of restoration efforts. And then you'll note under the climate smart agriculture area, the Friends of the Yampa and a partnership with a number of other groups have just put in a very large grant proposal to the Natural Resources Conservation Service for climate smart agriculture projects primarily focused on riparian habitats and restoration. That's something to look for in the future, that we would be making progress in an area of working with our agricultural partners and sequestering additional carbon. On higher elevation forests, there's been a lot of progress. The two key areas here are in reducing the risk of wildfire, which produces a lot of carbon from burning trees, as well as restoring forests either after fire or other disturbances. On the reducing wildfire risk, a big accomplishment is the publication of the Routt County Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which came out last fall. It has about 170 projects that are about protecting the community as well as reducing risk of wildfire. And just recently, the Routt County Office of Emergency Management launched a dashboard to track projects. So people that are interested in seeing what's happening in terms of wildfire reduction, risk reduction around the county can go right there and see what's being done, what's being planned, and that will grow over time going forward. On the planting side, the U.S. Forest Service has made a lot of progress recently by planting on both the Muddy Slide burn scar and the Silver Creek fire area. Planted over 50,000 trees this spring. They're beginning work and YVSC is helping on getting ready for doing similar work on the Big Red Park fire from a few years ago, with a large-scale planting there next fall. So it's great to see us being able to look that way, and the Routt National Forest is really stepping up to think about future planting and capacity as well. Next slide. And then we had a range of recommendations that related to land use development code at both the county level and the City of Steamboat Springs level. The good news is that the Routt County Board of County Commissioners just recently passed an updated unified development code covering all sorts of aspects of future development in the county, both individual houses, but also subdivisions and other larger development. A number of those provisions are very important for climate protection, to protect our natural habitats. a very increased strengthening of water body setbacks, protecting our riparian and wetland areas, strong protections for wildlife habitat in new development to minimize the disturbance of that and mitigate any impacts. They've done the same thing for large-scale solar development, which could be coming to Routt County, and improving water conservation in new developments, and also how we set land aside. A big future work on this, the city of Steamboat Springs is working on its development code, including a landscaping code, which will pick up some of these same themes as well. And we're looking forward to that process moving forward this year as well. So that's the update from land use, and I'll turn it over to Ashley for the last section.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to begin by mentioning that the strategies and actions within the economy sector are not as directly tied to emissions impact as the other sectors. However, these recommendations are essential for ensuring that the entire county and the local economy benefit from climate action work, and specifically that local businesses are supported to engage in climate action efforts across the county. Progress has been made on recommendation 1 with the city's adoption of a local procurement policy last fall. This policy gives preference to local businesses when contracting out projects costing more than $10,000, so long as their bid is within $5,000 or 10% of the best competing out-of-town bid. This should help local businesses compete for city contracts, and it is important for sustaining local business in town so they can continue to service the city and community. They joined the town of Hayden as a CAP governmental partner to adopt such a policy. Progress has also been made on recommendation 4, which supports carbon neutral, low emission zones in industrial parks and industrial zones. I don't know, Paul, if you mentioned this earlier, but the town of Hayden received $200,000 to study the potential use to use geothermal as its primary energy source in its new industrial park. The intent is to use this model and pass it along to private development within the community as well. We are also seeing notable progress with recommendation 5 and support for clean economy workforce development. YVSC is an active partner with Energy Smart Colorado, a coalition of regional governments and nonprofits working on building efficiency and electrification. Energy Smart Colorado obtained a Buildings Up grant to expand the workforce necessary to deliver these efficiency and electrification at scale. YVSC will be hosting a pilot training session funded through this effort that focuses on heat pump installations on Monday, September 16th, and will continue to work closely with Energy Smart Colorado to bring other workforce development efforts to the Yampa Valley. Colorado Mountain College also received a planning grant to do a workforce development center of industrial and skilled trades. A couple other initiatives to note include a new initiative through the Northwest Colorado Development Council to sustain regional economic development by setting up a Rural Development Innovation Center for coal transitional workforce in Northwest Colorado. This will be in association with the new Small Business Development Center funded through the Office of Economic Development and International Trade to provide business consultation, counseling, and training to help existing and new businesses develop innovative plans, access funding opportunities and technical resources, and to navigate employment legislation. S3, also known as the Yampa Valley Partnership for Students Stewardship and Sustainability Initiative, is supporting school climate curriculums and innovation career centers to advance and train clean economy workforce. The program hopes to reach more than 15,000 middle and high school students. Finally, we've had great success furthering the goals of recommendation 6, an expansion of the Green Business Program. With support from a $60,000 USDA grant, YVSC, as a regional partner of the Colorado Green Business Network, has seen significant growth of the Green Business Program. Since the start of the grant in October, the number of registered businesses has increased from 8 to 27. In our role as a regional partner, we provide free technical assistance and promotion and recognition of local businesses and organizations pursuing sustainability goals. With help from the Steamboat Springs Chamber, we co-hosted 3 well-attended business leadership for climate workshops focused on benefits of the program, how to earn points for recognition and funding opportunities. Our final workshop will be held on Tuesday, September 17th at Library Hall, and will be a community celebration of our local green businesses and organizations. Participants will host a table and talk about their products and services and share what they're doing in the green business space. The event is free and open to the public, so I would encourage you all to attend. I can drop a registration link in here shortly. We also hold monthly office hours, the last Wednesdays of each month from 8:30 to 9:30 at the Bud Warden Memorial Cafe for community members wanting to learn more about the program. And we look forward to continuing to expand the program and building a community of business and nonprofit leaders committed to advancing economic, social, and environmental sustainability. So that's the economy. Moving on to how you all can stay involved, visit our website. We do our best to keep that updated. That's where we post events. You can find all of our monthly newsletters and other news links there, board agendas, board minutes, resourceful page. We also are on social media, so you can find our links there. If you want a more detailed look of our progress tracker that we are working on within the groups and we share with the board every month, you can find that there's a link to that on the CAP recommendations page on our website. If you ever want to ask a question, you can get us at info@routeclimate.com. If you aren't already subscribed, I hope you all will subscribe to our monthly newsletter. We try to break it down into highlighting our 5 sectors, what's going well, what we're doing, where our wins are, and also ways that you can participate and action items you guys can take. So that QR code will get you there. As always, we hope that you support climate policies and hold our decision makers accountable in these areas. And then always there's opportunities to volunteer and get your hands dirty on some of our reforestation projects that you all may already familiar with through the YVSC program. We did create a very brief survey through Google Forms asking these questions. We'd love it if you guys took a minute or two to give us some feedback on how the CLAP collaborative is doing. And with that, I think we can move into questions and discussion.
All right, great. Well, thank you all so much for that wonderful overview of process, the history of the collaborative to date, and then updates on the working group updates to how we're doing on CAP implementation. And hopefully all attendees feel nice and energized seeing how many greens and yellows we have, and the goal is to get the yellows to greens and get the reds to greens. So everyone's working on that. If you do have questions, we do have some good time for Q&A and a roundtable discussion. If you would like to ask your question, you can unmute and clear your throat or something so I can hear you, or you can put it in the chat. Again, this is an opportunity for the collaborative board and working group members and facilitators to really update you all on what is underway. So if you have any questions, please do ask them. And we would love to have your feedback on this very brief survey. It should probably take no more than 2 to 3 minutes, but depending on how strongly you feel about your responses, it could take you longer. But we would love to have you hear your thoughts that way. So I will hold some time for questions if anyone wants to unmute, or you can type. I do have a plug for the newsletter. If anyone has ever signed up for the Catherine Hayhoe, her climate newsletter, I mean, I would wager that ours is even better. It's local, it's the positivity, it's the opportunities for improvement, but it really is a monthly way to stay apprised of key actions that are underway. So I do encourage you to sign up for the newsletter if you haven't. Among your work teams and colleagues, please have them sign up. The more people that are informed about what's happening underway, then the more we can all talk about it as a community. So do sign up for that. Any questions or comments?
Joe, Todd Carr, Rock County Building Department.
Hi, Todd.
Hi, thanks for the presentation today. I just wanted to give a little bit of feedback and make sure that some folks on this CAP board or within certain working groups, maybe the energy sector working group, are following what the state energy code board has been up to. Currently, they're going beyond the electrification solar ready code and working on a potential energy code beyond the 2021 IECC that most of our communities have adopted. So they're probably, I would guess, about into the 5th month of that. So just wanted to make sure you folks are following that along the way. That was it.
Great. Thank you so much, Todd, for that.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions, other things that you want to share in relation to the sector working groups and your work in relation to partners?
If I could, I would love to put a link in the chat for the construction and demolition survey that we are doing. It's basically a contractor survey that the city has put together with our consultant to try to get some feedback regarding wastes that are generated in the construction and demolition sector as we work through this study.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. And Alicia Archibald, City of Steamboat Springs.
Community Recycling Coordinator. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Alicia.
You bet.
Is there a time frame by which that is closing or any other?
Yes, and it really is for the building community. So as you know, folks, if you would share that with any folks in the building community, the trades that are associated with contracting or building, the survey will close August 9.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Hi, Dave Miller. I'm in conjunction with a hostel program that I'm working on. I want a sustainable hostel, and I've been talking to the mass timber industry, and I was kind of curious. There was no mention of mass timber in any of the discussions, and I think mass timber needs a really close look and consideration. I also want to share with you, well, Mass Timber is having their big conference in Denver at the end of this month, and it's a lot of big shots are going to be in town. There's a lot on YouTube about Mass Timber, so if anyone in the out there has not looked into it, it's really very interesting. I did have a delightful conversation with one of the leaders from the state, is Kyle Hansen. And he's with Timber Age Systems in Durango, and he'll probably be contacting someone in your group. But I hope that Mass Timber gets a really good look at it. It covers a lot of the objectives that are of interest. So please check it out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Dave.
Michelle, just to respond to Dave, thanks for bringing that up, Dave. I know it has been an issue that the Christine Rambo and the Economic Development Group have been looking at opportunities to try to bring mass timber facilities to Round County. That would be an opportunity to sequester carbon from local wood. But certainly replacing concrete and steel and traditional construction with mass timber is an overall climate savings as well. That doesn't quite fit into any of our sectors, so that may be where it fell through. But I'm sure it's something that it's sort of reducing use of construction projects up front, so something important to do. And I see the question about mass timber. Mass timber is a process whereby you take smaller pieces of wood and put them together, laminated basically, and it allows you to replace structural steel and concrete in up to some skyscrapers or buildings at least 10 stories tall are being made that way. So that's the biggest climate win, is the option to sequester some carbon from wood and avoid carbon emissions associated with steel and concrete construction. So thanks for bringing that up, Dave.
It also reduces forest fire dangers, which is a biggie.
Well, it depends where the wood comes from. It's unclear if it would come from our local fires, but yes, somewhere that would be a reduction.
And that's the point of bringing up Kyle Hansen, because he is talking it's a Colorado company that's interested in local, and so it's worth a very serious consideration.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Dave, and for the response, Tim.
Michelle, it's Todd Carr again. I just wanted to follow up with Dave's comment. It was a good one, and let Dave and everyone else know, through the adoption process of the 2021 IBC and IRC, heavy timber charts and tables within our code tables have been added to Chapter 5. So we recognize and can approve all different types of mass timbers now. So there's about 5 different categories. So we're equipped in the building department to handle that once we start seeing more of it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Todd. I see a question in the chat. What can local everyday people do to support the climate action plan? That is a great question. I think sometimes when we hear about these big plans, we wonder, how can I, integrate this into my daily life? I'd say the first thing is to know about it, know that we have one. So if you are informed, all attendees of this meeting now are, let people know that we do actually have a county level climate action plan, which is anchored in an intergovernmental agreement. So towns of Hayden, Oak Creek, and Yampa, City of Steamboat Springs, and Routt County are working hard to partner, cooperate, and collaborate to really implement a climate action plan. So not all communities have them, not all counties have them. So it's a good thing to know, is just how to have them. And then it really is a plan that's focused on reducing emissions. And so, as you heard at the outset, when Council President Gary was going through where are our major emissions coming from, it really is that kind of energy sector, which is mostly how we heat and cool our buildings, as well as transportation. YVSC just wrapped up our carbon-free challenge, and we had over 140 participants in that. And so people just made the choice to get on their bike, on their skateboard, on their scooter, carpool, not take their car for these little one-off errands. And even those little daily actions can make a difference. And then I mentioned Catherine Hayhoe. I think our newsletter might be better, but she always talks about the importance of talking about that. So if you choose to get on your bike and ride to the park, you could say, like, it's just easy to do and it's good for climate. So it's always good to think about what are those little things, where possible, explore beneficial electrification, meaning electric water heaters, shifting out and away from natural gas. We've had some great work at the county level, as Paul was sharing the updates there, as well as Todd Carr with the 2021 building code update process. So, the ban or the requirement of renewable energy to fuel our outdoor heating systems, for instance, so snow melt or other outdoor furnaces. So it really does matter in that day to day. And I would just say, knowing that we have a climate action plan and this opportunity to make it part of how we advance, as communities, is a really important place to just engage with each other.
And Michelle, I may just add to that, right? I mean, I think some of even the more, daily activities are, it's just recycle. And certainly, we have a compost company, CalGrow Compost, in town. So if you're interested in waste and reducing the amount of organics that you throw into your trash, then composting is in and of itself one of the most kind of infinitely recyclable things that we can do in, our community. And certainly one of those examples when we talk about, a circular economy. We talked a little bit about the Good Traveler program. So that's another program that I would encourage everybody to sign up for. And that allows you to offset the carbon emissions of your flights. And that's something that goes back into a fund that will ultimately be used here locally to fund climate action plan projects. So that's an opportunity. And then, I think all that we can do to just reduce our consumption and reduce our waste is important. And with that, purchase locally and whenever we can, and also support those businesses that are part of the Green Business Program. No better way to than to use our dollars, right? We make choices every day with how we spend our money. So this is just another extension of that as we, make purchases and use those to support businesses that are doing what they can to advance climate action. So those are just a few more thoughts. So thank you.
Those are great additions, Gail, and thank you. And then I'll add, I see Susie Rombig put in the chat to join Climate Corps, so our Climate Crew opportunities. So if you have the time and the opportunity to get out and volunteer, YVSC does host Yampa Valley Climate Crew projects that are available for a range of accessibilities, ages, ease of travel to different locations, and doing things like regeneration surveys, which we're finding is actually really advancing the ways in which our U.S. Forest Service can move forward on upland forest reforestation and regeneration. We have the Yampa River Forest Restoration Program, so planting trees along the Yampa. I will say there's some really heartwarming comments. The ages are generally like 3 to 83. And so we say that it's building a forest while building community. And so getting out with people and taking action where you can also is really kind of fills your cup up, and it makes a big difference as we think about reducing emissions and then also increasing our resilience to hotter and drier conditions ahead. I see a question from Michael Woodbridge about the progress on getting local location for recycling things like cardboard for free.
I can
Gail
tackle
or
that one,
Scott?
Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have completed a drop site study, and so we have a better idea of what would be required to do something like that, along with the costs, and also the money coming into such a facility. We are challenged in this area. Land is very expensive, so it's difficult to find places where we can do that. I would say the good news is, like I was saying before, is that with Apex coming in, that'll be one of the things that we talk to them about, and certainly there's opportunities. And so they're still kind of getting their feet on the ground. It's a pretty new thing. And so as some time passes and we have more conversations with them, that'll be one of the things that we'll talk about, not just cardboard, but other materials. And I see Alicia has come on, so I'd welcome her to weigh in on that also.
Yeah, and I would just thanks for that, Scott. I would just, like you said, land is expensive, but also the fact that we are so far from markets, sometimes it's difficult for businesses to be able to offer a recycling program at no cost. Just so that we're all, kind of aware of that. But if you have trash service now and you don't have recycling service, I would be happy to talk with you about that and how I can help your community, because I would be guessing it would be multifamily. There should be free recycling, not free recycling, but recycling service included in your residential service if you are in the city of Steamboat Springs. And then what I know about drop-off opportunity would be, and this could shift a little, I'm not sure with the new owners, but both Twin and Waste Management would allow you to bring your recyclables at no cost to their drop-off centers, respectively, whichever service you had at your residence. So that is a potential opportunity there. And I think Gail could talk to EPR potentially.
If I can come on mute. I just hi. It's been mentioned a couple of times. Extended Producer Responsibility Act, which was passed by the legislature. And ultimately, that puts the burden, or I would say the cost of recycling, on the plastic and the producers. And ultimately, the monies that will be collected will be used to create a statewide recycling program that will provide free recycling throughout the state of Colorado. So that's in the works. I sat on the state advisory board. It has, we're about a year into it and probably have another year or so to go in terms of creating the implementation plan and then actually starting to collect the funding so that the services can be rolled out. And if anybody has any additional questions about that, I'm happy to talk offline.
Great. I see a question from Haley Cunningham. What kinds of accountability tools does the CAP use or plan to use to sustain changes on the ground after policies are changed? And does holding accountability fall to residents, or are there tools built into the CAP Collaborative's working model? It's a great question, Haley. And so the climate action plan itself, there is an entire accountability section. So that's a good thing to see in plans. And the accountability is really being advanced through this collaborative structure. And so there's monthly collaborative board meetings whereby the board reviews actions taken underway, and then the working groups, they're meeting at present quarterly to evaluate what's happening, identify barriers, and then feed that information to the board members. And so the accountability from the board perspective is working to make sure that as Gail mentioned, that there's ongoing funding to support implementation, that there is cooperation and collaboration to support policy level changes. And so there's kind of in the creation of the collaborative, accountability was brought into the process in a really helpful way. As far as tracking as that pertains to accountability, it's still of discussion, but one way to kind of evaluate, what's being done from a carbon emission reduction standpoint with actions that are taken. Looking at, is there a way to calculate emissions avoided or emissions reduced via actions? And that's certainly of discussion by the board members. Oftentimes governments will do greenhouse gas inventories at particular intervals, whether they're 3 or 5 year intervals. That's also of discussion of the board. But I would just say, I think that it really is a great success that our climate action plan was first, created in the first place. But then that the CAP governments opted to create this intergovernmental agreement, which is called the collaborative. And that is an accountability process and structure. So it's an excellent question, and I think it just presents an opportunity to continue to update. Any other thoughts or questions there? We've had good questions in the chat and good resources, so I think probably what we'll do is paste these into the email, which also will send out. This was a recorded meeting. Because this is anchored in an IGA, all meetings are also open to the public. There's not always time for public comment in those, but if you are interested in learning more or attending, you're welcome. And then I do invite you to please do the survey. Please do sign up for the newsletter if you have not already. And we look forward to this. I do see Scott Cowman has raised his hand. Scott?
Yeah, I'm just reading the end of Haley's comment, and Haley, happy to talk to you offline in more detail. But, I know that in the county's new master plan and their new code that, they used those CAP goals, incorporated those CAP goals into those plans. And so that kind of thing is going on with other master plans as well. And so happy to talk to you in more detail, but that's another great question. And it is important that, when the city or the county or whoever is working on master planning, that they're incorporating these concepts into those plans. And so that is happening also. So thanks for pointing that out.
Great. Thank you so much for that response and the additional question there. So we have reached the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for joining today. This was a really fruitful discussion. Thank you all for your attendance and your interest in this topic, and it really is an important conversation and opportunity for continued action. So have a great remainder of your July and a safe and healthy remainder of your summer, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you all members of the board and the working groups for joining.